Study shows virus lockdowns in the UK are causing children to regress and forget basic skills. Gosh, with all this power to drive kids backward towards ignorance, maybe we should award COVID-19 with an education degree and make it a member of the Teachers Union. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with more COVID-19 fallout as new reports find children are regressing in basic life skills, simple reading, math, and speech due to lockdowns. And not just that, apparently, some kids in the UK no longer know how to use utensils at the dinner table and need to be re-potty trained. Some of this obviously has to be a mom and dad problem, but this is what happens in free societies. When you farm out basic education to strangers, when we turn the family home into the place where real learning doesn't take place, does it surprise you that kids can't wipe their butts without the help of a public school teacher?
And this is actually coming from a study that was done by the Office for Standards in Education, Children's Services and Skills, and it's known as Ofsted. So Ofsted published 5 different reports based on their findings from more than 900 visits to various education and social care providers across England. And this is just since September. So 900 visits since September. And they say that some of the children most affected by this disruption of the pandemic were those in the earliest years of education with working parents who experienced the double whammy, they say, of less time with parents and less time with other children. And that's according to Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman. And the fact that, like you said, that some kids are forgetting even how to use the bathroom properly or not go in their pants or being able to eat with a knife and fork anymore just in this amount of time shows you how damaging this lockdown is versus what COVID-19 is doing to them.
Well, the COVID-19 is bad. The lockdown is in many respects worse. And what's worse still is this crippling need to have somebody else look after our families. How did the we're only about 10 years, maybe 5 years behind the UK on this. How did the UK how did UK, which had perhaps the largest empire in the history of the world, get to the point where they can't look after their own kids enough to make sure that even if you have to work, even if you have, I assume you have babysitters or grandma sitting with the kids, or you're using daycare, how is it possible that kids regress so bad just by being left home alone? This has nothing to do with anything more than the lack of self-reliance, the lack of regard for liberty, the disdain for the responsibilities that come with responsible parenthood. We've just gotten to the point, and the UK is much worse than us with their NHS. They're constantly bragging about the national healthcare system, talking about all this other stuff. But when the rubber meets the road, if you're not looking after that most sacred thing, the family unit, if you're not bringing your kids forward, regardless of what the public schools are doing, then you deserve what you get. And Europe's already become basically a slave state to the nanny state. We're going to get there really quick. Trump's gone now, it looks like, and what you're about to get now is a whole lot more mommy nanny state coming at you. They want to start pre-K. They want to make your kids, force them into 2-year colleges after they graduate, whether they want to or not, all paid for by the taxpayers. They want your kids at ages 3 and 4. It's going to get pretty soon. We've already seen in this country, too. When you start taking some of those responsibilities back, when you start pulling back some of those responsibilities that belong to schools don't like it very much. They want you to stop doing it. They want you to not get involved. They want, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the refrain I kept hearing was, gosh, we really need the help of the parents. We really need parents to help us become better educators. Now, in the Common Core era, it's just stand back and let us do it for you. And that's not working very well either.
Well, and what we're seeing too, in England, they've actually been in school this entire time since September. This fall, they all in England schools went back to in-person classes. So when you do a little comparison of what's happening in the United States versus what's happening in England, they've been off, the United States and England were off all of the spring, and then in the summer, whatever normally happens during the summer. But the fact that there's still how many U.S. children out of school and not being in at the younger ages, who knows what's actually happening in the households to them. Now that is up to the parents to, as you said, it's on the parents to be able to do some of this stuff. But at the same time, how much maybe worse will it be over in America compared to what it is in England? We don't know.
Well, that is a big deal. I mean, the Europeans have somehow stiff upper lipped it a little bit and put some of these kids back without devastating results, I might add. Meanwhile, we've got big city mayors and we got governors of states. We've got almost the entirety of the Democrat Party and every teachers union who wants to not have school. So, they still want to get paid. They still want to make sure that online learning, 2-3 steps back from actually in-class learning, they want to get full pay, full benefits for it. We're about to enter into a brave new world that looks suspiciously like a brave old world. If you think about what happened with education under the Obama administration, get ready for another 4 to 8 years of this. It's going to get really bad now because you had Obama, who gerrymandered Common Core into the system, who really, under his watch, thanks to Republicans in the House of Senate and the Senate, voted in things like the ESSA Act, which gives unprecedented power over your kids' education to the federal government. Then we get Trump, right? And he's the mistake Democrats vowed never to make again. For the 4 years of relative peace we've had with education, here you go. 4-year reminder to progressive liberals, we never let it happen again. If you don't think they're going to start putting the pedal to the metal on divorcing you from your kids in every meaningful sense, starting in January, you better think again.
And we know how bad education has already been in this country. And when you compare to what's happening in Wales, it's coming over by us too. So in Wales, the officials are they're more stringent about what's happening with restrictions and that with COVID-19 than even England itself. And they had already announced that the crucial exams for secondary schools are going to be canceled for 2021 because, all the disruptions on all that and it removes the pressure from the learners, as they say. We already know what's happening in America. They're canceling the actual education part of what you're supposed to be getting educated on because of, the pressure, and it's not equal, and everyone has to be equal and the same. And if we can't do that, then nobody gets anything. And so if they're doing it in Wales, it's kind of already happening here, but it's going to come down the pipe even faster.
Yeah, it's funny. When we got No Child Left Behind, goals 2000 under Clinton, No Child Left Behind under Bush, Common Core under Obama, we were sold that these things were going to be validated by the tests. These tests that every kid has in common is going to show where we need to be and how hard we have to work to get kids up to that lecture. Well, ever since 4 or 5 years ago, and what was all about educational reform came all about of ideology, right? This new focus on wokeism, this new focus on Black Lives Matter curriculum, this America is horrible from the beginning new phase that we're entering. Notice that tests have to go too. Tests that were supposed to show us where our kids were lacking are now tests that show us how bad our kids are lacking. But we no longer have the will to fix it. We've given up trying to move our kids up, right? We've given up trying to use the tests as benchmarks to teach us how to teach better. No. What we've decided now, as Katie just pointed out, tests aren't inclusive. That's the only buzzword you need to know about a modern education. You can throw out diversity even. You can throw out every other little lib talking point when it comes to education. The only thing you have to understand, and this is very socialist, is that the purpose of education is inclusion. Everybody will get the same education all the time, and the only way we'll know it's true is that when everybody graduates, they will know everything in common and nothing that somebody else doesn't know. In other words, you're going to have to keep your kids really, really dumb and collectivized. Well, what better way to get Democrat voters?
So we have a 9-year-old girl who's just out there being a kid, minding her own business, following all the rules of the school, having to wear a mask and such. But now she's not allowed to do that because her mask says Jesus loves me, and we can't have that. We have little Lydia, who was told that her mask was not allowed in her Mississippi school in the Simpson County School District. And many students throughout the district have worn messages on masks to express themselves. But apparently because it says Jesus loves me, that's not allowed. But you can wear, sports teams, university logos, television phrases, political candidates, and even the phrase Black Lives Matter. So yes to Black Lives Matter, no, Jesus loves me.
This is not going to win. They're going to lose this. I think the school, Katie will fill you in on the rest of the story, but they've already more or less conceded that this was a mistake to some degree. or they will find out soon enough if the mom pushes it. Bottom line is, remember the case of Polly Olson? We've talked about it on this show before. Polly's a good friend of the show. Polly is a Wisconsin college kid. College, not the lower grades, as in this case, the public schools. But she was trying to pass out Jesus Loves You Valentines on college a number of years back. And the college told her, no, you can't do it. And after repeated twice she had to take them to court till a judge finally gave her the victory here. This is one of those things that you can't, you don't have the constitutional right to pull this off. We'll see, though. It's going to depend on how much mom is willing to push back.
And so what happened, I mean, little Lydia has been wearing this mask for months, and nothing happened, and then all of a sudden, something happened. So
One teacher.
Yep, so mom took a look into the actual district's policy guidelines, whatever it is that they have to follow. She found no policy violations. And so mom then put a post up announcing this on her private social media. In the very next school day, after being notified of the mom's post, the principal was contacted mom and then called the mom in to explain that masks can't have political or religious messages. So no actual policy violations. Lydia's been wearing it for months. Other students have worn all political messages and all that. But now Lydia can't do it. And Lydia was forced to remove the mask and replace it with a different mask. And mom said, quote, after speaking with multiple school officials and questioning this incident on social media, the school's leadership changed its policies to prohibit any religious messages on masks in an attempt to justify their actions against Lydia and discredit our complaint. My husband and I soon discovered the discrepancy and their attempt to cover up the incident. Shocker.
Yeah. And the fact that they had to go ahead and change their policy after the fact shows you that they're doubling down on stupid. And I hope mom and dad make it to the court phase because they're going to win big on this. The other thing I would do if I were you, mom and dad, the fact that the school made your daughter take her mask off is a big deal here, right? They were so bigoted against the message that they were okay with having her take her mask off at school. We're pretty sure that in any other circumstance, they wouldn't have done that. They would have dared to done that. But they made your daughter take a mask off and put on another one. Where did this other mask come from? Was it the same quality of the mask that you had bought for her? These are all questions that perhaps, unfortunately, even more than religious liberty, might just hang them by their own petard. And, I should say, impale them on their own petard, to keep the analogy correct. And we ask ourselves this other question, too. How could this be happening in Mississippi? Which is, this is exactly the kind of thing you'd expect to hear under Cuomo's New York or Newsom's California. But when it starts happening in Mississippi, it just goes to show you those red states that weren't enough, those red states that just aren't enough anymore to push Republicans over the top, not going to be red for that much longer.
And I just kind of want to end on this quote. And so everyone does know, they are filing suit with Alliance Defending Freedom. So there is something in the works. But I like how the mom said, as a parent, I'm the primary teacher of my children. And in addition to and consistent with our faith in Jesus Christ, we have instilled in them a love for our country and the freedoms it allows to worship, express, and live by our faith in God. Being wronged on a personal level is only the beginning. Freedom extends far beyond ourselves. And then she said, public schools are supposed to be the very places where our nation's fundamental freedoms are taught and modeled. Instead, our daughter's religious freedom and freedom of speech were censored because her expression was considered offensive and unwelcome by the school's leadership. This behavior cannot be tolerated.
Try this, Mom. If Black Lives Matter is allowed and Jesus Loves Me is not, try wearing a White Lives Matter to campus. You have Lydia do that. Let's see how consistent their policies are.
We talk about all the time about, kids say the darndest things. But we have a principal in Maine who said the darndest thing, except his was profanity-laced and not quite so cute. He used profanity to describe supporters of President Trump. Bill Gifford, the principal of Oceanside Middle School in Thomaston, Maine, reportedly wrote on Facebook the night before the election, which if you want to really dig into how your teachers feel about you or anyone you know or the principals or any administrators, go look on their personal Facebook pages the nights before any sort of election or speech or anything important involving President Trump. Now, Bill took to the Facebook and wrote that Trump is not my president and is possibly the worst president ever. He also ripped Trump's trolls and called them A-wipes. He also reportedly wrote that Trump supporters have big trucks and small dinglings, we'll say. Well, isn't that? He's such a nice principal. I wish he was my principal.
Well, you make a good point. It's funny the degree to which public schools are monitoring your kids' social media. the public schools are on a crusade to make sure that if your kid says something that's not woke enough or something that they in their ever-expanding definition of racism see as racist, they're all over your kids. They're suspending kids now for things they say on their social media over the summer. They're on top of this. Why shouldn't we hold them to the same standard? If kids get suspended and or expelled for expressing unpopular or tacky or bigoted posts on their social media, we should be doing it to the teachers and the principals here. And this guy is a piece of work, right? I mean, that argument that Katie closed with, these Trump supporters all have big trucks. The level of scapegoating, the level of generalization, the level of bigoted stereotypes that these people, the left, uses. If you were, as a conservative, or any normal person, you were to use against anybody else in any other connotation, it would immediately be viewed as cancel culture time for you, because that would be exclusionary, racist, bigoted, and generalized. But no, when they do it, Trump supporters with their big trucks and their little small, I believe the clinical term Katie used was ding-a-ling. She's an education major, so I'm sure she's up on the vernacular more than I am.
Well, this is not the first time he's decided to post such terminology. In the past, he's written Trump monkeys are ignorant effers who are part of goon squads, and added that now that the gloves are off and you are either with me or with him and his fascist army.
You know what? If my choice is between, take a look at our principal there. There's Bill in his active wear with his little yuppie shades over his cap with the little smug liberal smile. You know what? You're the first guy I've ever met in education. Well, you're not the first, I should say. You're one of many people I've met in higher education, lower education, education generally, that actually make me consider siding with the fascists. People like you make fascism look viable.
Well, at Regional School Unit 13, the community was shown these various posts that Gifford did, and the Bangor Daily News reported that Gifford was the second Maine school official in the last week who made disparaging remarks against Trump. So up in Maine, this is all the educators are doing. The
Banger. I hardly know her.
There you go. The school board chair.
We can play that way. See, we can play that way too.
The school board chair of Regional School Unit 71 resigned after making profane remarks on election night. So again, anytime you're any important speech, any election, if they come out of the woodwork. Not that they've ever been in woodwork, but they come out and really make the post public.
What gets me is the lame non-apology. I mean,
yes, we didn't get to that yet.
Quote from Mr. Gifford. My mistake was to include profanity. So I could say hateful things about you without swearing. It would be okay. My mistake was to include profanity. And for that, I'm truly sorry and hope that the community can accept this with heartfelt apology. It is, quote, it is a great privilege to hold a leadership position and help guide our youth to real. What about those Trump supporters with their tiny little toy trucks and tiny little, oh, never mind. It's a great privilege to hold leadership position and help guide our youth to realize their full potential. With this great privilege, I realize that I have the responsibility to ensure that I demonstrate effective ways to communicate. Explain to me an effective way to communicate what you said, Clown Show. Tell us how you would do that. We'll even grant you, we'll give you a mulligan, okay, on the swearing. Say what you said without being offensive. We'll wait.
And that quote ends with, I demonstrate effective ways to communicate, even when I disagree, in a way that ensures a productive and respectful dialogue.
Yeah, my
monologue.
My truck and my junk both beg to differ that he's open to suggestion on these issues.
It's time for some real education. Born in 1969 in Guangzhou, China, to a poor family, Chen Wenling studied at Xiamen Academy of Art. He quickly found international, critical, and commercial success as a sculptor, with his art exhibited both within China and abroad. In 1999, Chen won the Venice Biennale's top prize, the prestigious Golden Lion. He continues to exhibit around the world and lives and works in Beijing, China.
And there is a picture of Chen. You can see them there. And I wanted to talk about this, because it's a whimsy. It's a very whimsical work of art. Go first to the image of the art piece. So there you have a bull. And the bull, in case you go to another angle on that, Mike, so you can get a close art. So there's the back end of the bull. And there is the powerful flatulence that has propelled the bull, which is a very sturdy bull. It's a big old animal, has propelled a figure, a human figure. You have one more image, I think, on that from the side, Mike? Yes, that propels a figure up against the wall, smashing him. That figure is meant to be Bernie Madoff. And so what we have here is a commentary on capitalism. And whatever else it is, it's a commentary on capitalism. And one of the questions I like to bring up as we keep our eyes on these pictures is, where does art and politics cross that line? I'm used to hearing, in all my adult lifetime as an educator, I'm used to hearing, well, Duke, everything is politics. Everything is political, Dr. Pester. It's impossible for you to talk. There's no such thing as aesthetics. There's no such thing as moral values. There's no such thing as theological value. Everything is politics. Just get rid of everything else and focus on politics. Well, that's what we have here. Is this art or is it agitprop? I mean, is it something that's aesthetically beautiful? Is it in and of itself something artistically unusual? It's unusual. But I would suggest to you that what we're dealing with here is agitprop. There's nothing in the sculpture of poor Bernie Madoff pinned to the wall. There's nothing remarkable about the bull sculpture. There's nothing particularly marvelous about the cauliflower-like explosion of flatulence. This is primarily a political statement. I would call this political agitprop masquerading as art. And if you're a lefty, you think this is the best art you've ever seen, right? Chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. I would like to ask Chen Wenling something, though, because, again, he's an artist born in China. He lives primarily in China. I'd like to ask him, if art is politics, which we keep hearing from all of our professor class, right, that art is politics, right, then my question to him is, what are you rebelling against? What is it? Because that's the purpose of politics, right? If art is politics, that politics has to be transgressive, like Piss Christ. Remember that? Where from the artist Serrano, take a crucifix, dump it into a bottle of urine, and everybody oohs and ahs, and you get hundreds of thousands of dollars from the government for this garbage. Same thing as the picture. Remember the image of the Virgin Mary that had elephant feces smeared all over it? Same thing. See, that's transgressive. It's not like this picture, like this sculpture. It's not technically all that remarkable. It's not an example of great sculpture. It's just making the right political statement. And my suggestion to Chen Wenli is this. If your art doesn't challenge oppressive governments but supports it, is it really even politically worthy? Again, it's easy to take on Wall Street. That's part of what's going on here with the bull, right? The bull is runaway capitalism, but that's kind of a weird statement. If the bull represents capitalism, wouldn't you have Bernie Madoff actually perhaps doing something to the bull instead of vice versa? Wouldn't the bull ultimately pay the price of Bernie's incontinence as a financial advisor? No. And the real irony here is that in China, Chen Wenli is able to go after American capitalism, and no one in the Chinese Communist Party is bothered by that. What do you think would happen if Chen actually spoke truth to power to his communist overlords and did something very similar? I think you and I both know the answer to that. This is not art. It's not even very good agitprop, because you're attacking the safe ones, while the ones that you live under, the ones with the great big beam in their eye, you got nothing to say.
All right, before we go, just a reminder that the best way to keep up with our various shows at Freedom Project is to follow us on Parler. So take 10 whole seconds of your day and follow at Duke Pesta, at Katie, and at Freedom Project. Thank you very much. Now, we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, because we do love our Patriot Club members. Without them, we're not going to be here. So today we'd like to give a shout out to Wayne from Shingle Springs, California. Wayne, thank you so very much for supporting us. And if you're a fan of this show and you want to get a shout out, please consider a one-time deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we're going to send you an awesome tumbler that says, "Freedom never tasted so good." All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap all of today up with a fun fact of the day. The company Burt's Bees. Have you heard of the bee's knees?
I use Burt Bees.
It was founded in Maine, so there's something good in Maine, by a former photojournalist. Back in 1984, Bert Shavitz moved from New York to Maine. He became a beekeeper, he sold some honey, and then he co-founded Burt's Bees with Roxanne Quimby.
And that's our show for today. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay waxy and emoliated, my friends.